Alright, so I'm gonna do a longer video on firearms because I've just normally just done some shorts. Don't really know if anybody's watching them. I know I have 12 subscribers now, which is cool, but I like to post them anyway just because in the end it's like a nice little video journal that I have that I don't have to pay to store. It's stored on YouTube, and YouTube pays to store it. So that's pretty cool. Let's talk about handguns, because I just got back from the range. Shot some 9mm, and it had been a while, but I also got to shoot my 5.56. This is an LWRC, not direct impingement. This is a piston. So this is really, really clean, very awesome. A lot of fun to shoot, but not what we're going to talk about. I want to talk about, and I can do another video on that guy some other time, but I want to talk about something that a lot of people have on their mind, and that is, well, I don't know if they have it on their mind necessarily, but there's a lot of videos already out there. Maybe they're old, maybe I'm just late to the game, but talking about my experiences with the different calibers of 9mm versus 45 ACP. This is obviously a defense round, where this is just target round, but the difference between these two calibers and the difference between shooting these guys, what I prefer more, pros and cons of each, because they're just different weapons and they have different pros and cons. One's not necessarily better than the other. There's things that I like from both and things that I dislike from both. So this one I did not shoot today. This is the 1911. This is a Kimber 1911. It's a higher end 1911. Kimber is known for higher end firearms. However, that being said, this is the lower end of their high-end firearms. So this is like the lowest tier. This is the Custom 2. I believe now it's around $8.99. When I purchased it, it was $7.99. I did not want this originally. I love 1911s, don't get me wrong. I did not originally want this particular gun though. When I went in to get my first purchased handgun, I had inherited handguns from my grandfather, but my first one that I purchased and had to run my own background check on was this 1911, and it was the only one besides an even more expensive 1911 from Kimber. I think it was like the Shadow Warrior or something crazy. It was like in the $1,500 range. This was the cheapest thing and the only thing available due to the pandemic. I guess there was like a gun frenzy that went on and people were just purchasing them like crazy. So this was the only thing I could get. So I got this. I don't regret getting it. I do regret the fact, I guess I can't regret it. It's not really my choice, but the ammo is a lot more expensive. So I wasn't able to train as much on this. Also, it didn't allow for like customization. It had night sights. I could have got different sights, iron sights put on here, but that would have cost more money in addition to the almost $900 that I spent out the door for this thing. And there's no way for me to get a red dot plate on here that I know of to try a red dot on this thing, but from what I understand, I cannot do that. So and I'm going to go into more detail after I contrast it with this one, which is something I've got just this year in July. This is a Glock 19 chambered in 9mm, and this thing does allow for customization. I was able to put a weapons light on here, which is a pretty sweet little weapons light. I was able to put a red dot on it by buying a new slide that I could just throw on, no problem. The slide was only $100. The Hollow Sun 407C red dot was only $240. So that was only $340, and the whole Glock was about $500. So it ended up being like the same price pretty much, but I got these extras added onto it. Not to mention I still have the stock slide that this came with, so if I wanted to buy another frame, I could build another Glock pretty easily, which is kind of cool. So all that modularity is really nice when it comes to the Glocks. And I'm assuming that's for a lot of the Striker Fire polymer frame weapons. And I'm going to use some snap caps so we don't have any live rounds going on. I'm going to put this live round away. For the 9mm snap caps, put this guy into my pocket. And I'm just going to get 2 snap caps from here. And we got 2 snap caps over there, just to show cycles and how they look when they're loaded. So one of the key differences here between the 1911 and a polymer fire, polymer frame Striker Fire, unless we're talking the Glock 48, we're looking at single stack versus double stack. And to me, the single stack is more aesthetically pleasing. It looks cleaner, sharper, and it looks better engineered, in my opinion. Now, that doesn't mean it's a better magazine. It is made of metal, but that doesn't mean that it's better because it's made of metal. The Glock 19 and most Glocks, again, there are single stack magazines for Glocks, just not the Glock 19. This is a double stack Glock 19 magazine, so as the bullets are loaded, they sort of double stack against each other as they fall into the magazine, which makes it loading after you get to 10 rounds a bit harder because you're pushing 2 down at the same time instead of just 1. However, I can tell you from experience that loading 10 rounds in this magazine is easier than loading 10 rounds in a 45 ACP 1911 extended mag. This is the extended mag, and when you get past 8 rounds, it gets difficult to get the last 2 rounds in. So it's not like one is easier than the other. Now, it is really easy to get 8 rounds into these magazines. You can do that very quickly, but you can also get 8 rounds into a double stack magazine very quickly without using any tools. I don't need an easy loader for this. In California, they've castrated us and capped us at 10, so it doesn't really matter. I don't need to use an easy loader. So the way that these magazines work are basically the same, except for this, the Glock has like a floating barrel system. This does not, and I'll show the floating barrel system in a little bit, but this is just the barrel's straight as the guide rod is, as straight as the slide is, and then when you release the slide, it chambers the round up the feeding ramp. What I really like about the 1911 is the slide release button. It's intuitive, it's easy to press with my thumb, it's in a very good spot. I can have my finger off the trigger and my thumb right on the slide release, and I can do everything in one motion. That is not the same with the Glock 19. Let's go over that right now. On the Glock 19, I'm gonna put my magazine in, just rack it real quick, make sure there's nothing in it, even though I can clearly see there's nothing in there. Get my magazine with my dummy rounds, snap caps in there. Now you can see how the barrel goes up away from the guide rod. The guide rod kind of follows, but the barrel is really curved up. It's because the barrel in here actually bends down at an angle to allow the bullet to get into the feed ramp. That's how it ramps up. That's why it's tilted like that, up like a ramp. Now, this is not as easy for me to press. Personally, it gets in the same location. I can have my finger off the trigger, have my thumb on the slide release beat, but the nature of the slide release, the fact that it's low profile, makes it a little bit more difficult to release. So I can still do it, but I struggle a bit with it. It's not as smooth as the 1911. There's ways around that. You can modify that. You can get different slide releases, and people seem to do that a lot. I just left it on. It's not that big of a deal to me. In fact, this slide sort of auto racks around when I put a magazine in like this, and I tap it in, it just feeds around automatically. I don't really need to do anything. So not a huge problem for me. Doesn't affect my actual shooting at all, but I'm also not in a competition, and I've never actually used this to save my life. So that being said, let's look at another component of these two guns. We have the safeties, and the safety mechanisms for me is where the 1911 takes the cake. So the safety on the 1911 is great because there's multiple safeties. So I know Glock says they have multiple safeties too, but their safety doesn't really seem as safe as a 1911. I could be wrong. When a 1911 has been loaded and we get around in the chamber, we have several safeties. One, we have the manual slide safety. Slide cannot go back. And the trigger cannot be pulled. We also have the back strap has a safety on it, so you have to be touching it and holding it down in order for that trigger to be released. I can't pull the trigger even though the manual slide safety is off, but as soon as I indent this back strap safety, there we go, we're good. So is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Up to you to decide. I think it makes it safer to carry around in the chamber because there's really a very, very small chance that both safeties are going to be engaged and off and allow that trigger to be pulled. I can't say the same with the Glock. I know people say this thing is unsafe because there is so many safety mechanisms that if you were to use this in a self-defense situation, this actually might hinder your ability to defend yourself. This, on the other hand, has one safety. They say they have 3 safety features, but it's not really 3 in my opinion. It's just one, and that's this little tiny thing right here that stops the trigger from being pulled unless it's pressed down. That's the only safety. So this thing all has to be there for the trigger to be pulled. That's the only safety on this thing. So I don't think that it's as safe to carry around in the chamber. In fact, I carry this concealed around my premises as per California law, but I don't carry around in the chamber because I don't trust it. I don't want to blow my balls off. The shootability of each of these. So right off the bat, if you were just to get this out of the package and shoot it, it's going to be easier for a beginner to shoot this 1911 and have the rounds that they put down range go to the target and the intended target that they want to hit. This is going to be a little bit more difficult, especially the Glock 19 being a bit smaller barrel length, and possibly the length of the handle possibly cause you to have less of a grip on it. I know when I shot these two side by side, both of them with iron sights, no red dot on this. Both had iron night sights from the factory. I had no weapon light, it was just stock. I had no grip tape on it. It was just stock. I shot them side by side, and shooting them side by side, shooting the Glock for the first time, even though it was a lighter caliber, it was easier for me to hit the target with the 1911 chambered in 45 ACP. The trigger is quite a bit smoother. So when you are pulling the trigger, there is no uptake. It is just one stage, fire. You press it, and you're good to go. With the Glock 19, you are going to see that there is some mush to the trigger. There's quite a bit of uptake before you hit a wall. And so that wall is what you have to break in order for that trigger to actually fire the projectile. So there is quite a bit of difference between that trigger. Now, these both are great guns to fire. They're fun to shoot at the range. They're accurate, but this one is more consistently accurate now that I have a red dot on here, and that I have grip tape, and I've put more rounds downrange with this because it's 9mm. Costs like 25 cents a round, 30 cents a round with the freaking tax we got to pay on it. As opposed to these guys, this is a snap cap, but the real stuff, it almost costs as much as my 5.56 to shoot. So this one I have put close to 3,000 rounds over a period of 2019 to 2024, so like 5 years. This one I've put over 3,000 rounds in a matter of months. So August, September, October, November. August, September, October, November. 4 months. 4 months, 3,000 rounds. 5 years, not even 3,000 rounds. So now I feel much more comfortable with the Glock 19 than I do with the 1911. I still take this out from time to time to fire it because it's fun. There's a lot of reliability issues I've ran into if your 1911 isn't clean and nicely lubricated, super wet. I've had some feeding ramp issues. After going through 1,000 rounds, I did not have any jams. I have not had any jams on this, just a little bit of feeding issues. But this one, I have not had any feeding issues with, except today when I was loading 1 round at a time, I noticed I had to tap before it would carry that round into the chamber onto the feed ramp. But again, it was minimal. And most of the time, if I load it like that, the slide closes on its own and it chambers the round just fine. This one, in all the rounds that I put down it, I think I only had 1 jam that ever occurred on it. This one, the 1911, I had many stovetop jams as I was going through the workout period of about 1,000 rounds you need to put through these Kimbers because they are really tight tolerances, but then they're not tuned after that. You tune it through your shooting basically. So this is, I would guess, has been through the workout period of 1,000 rounds, so this thing is good to go. No more jams, but again, if it's not super clean and not super oiled up, you can run into feeding issues, which are annoying. So in the end of the day, this is the one that I'm the most comfortable with. This is the one that I'm going to choose to concealed carry. This is the one I do concealed carry on my premises. This is the one that I fire most days when I go to the range. I go once a week, and I fire this the most because it's the cheapest to fire, and it's the one that I'm going to be defending myself with. I think both of them are great guns. I think as a beginner, I probably wish I would have gotten the Glock and then waited to get the 1911 so that I had some of my fundamentals down better with the Glock 19, which the Glock 19, it was cheaper for 9mm. It gave me more time on the range and more time to work on my fundamentals as far as trigger control. And this one doesn't require a lot of trigger control, so when you go from this to that, you actually get better at this one. So I wish I would have started with a harder to use gun, and I would consider this one harder to use, and then I would have been better at this one in the end. I don't regret the way that I did do things, though, because it was the way that I had to do things in order to get a firearm at all. And in the end, having a firearm is better than not having any firearm at all. I would rather have had the 1911 and no Glock 19 for as long as I did than just say, oh, there's no Glock 19, I'm gonna wait, and then never go back and get any firearm. So if you're making a choice for yourself, I would definitely go with something like a Glock. Basically, not because they're a better gun, it's just because it's going to be cheaper, it's going to allow you to shoot more, and there's going to be more customization that you can do to the gun as you figure out what you want in shooting. And that's going to be a personal choice as you move forward with your firearm journey. So hopefully you found this content entertaining or helpful. It just gave me a chance to kind of play with my guns a little bit more and talk about some of the pros and cons of each of these weapons. So